Hello, welcome to another live Google Hangout on the Living Income Guaranteed. And today we are discussing spirituality and a real wave of action. We've been having these Hangouts throughout this month in relation to the proposals that the Wave of Action movement have in terms of what can be done to now apply the change that is mostly being asked in this world, in relation to changing how the economy system works, how political systems operate, how we live in our societies. And I found it very interesting that points like meditation or gathering in groups and kind of creating this spiritual gathering was also listed as part of the solutions. And so I am also interested in hearing other people's perspectives on this in relation to, well, is this really the way to change the world? Are we missing out something very specific in relation to what real change implies? So let's welcome our panel today. We got Sandy Jones from Canada. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, everyone.
And Darryl Thomas from the US in Texas. Hi, Darryl.
Hey, aloha and mahalo.
Cool, guys. So let's begin with this. What would you say about this proposal of the Wave of Action saying that meditation or positive thinking or these gatherings wherein these energies are veered toward changing the world are created? Are these effective ways to change the world or what?
I would say I don't think there's anything necessarily horribly wrong with gathering and, going to a meditative place. That's fine. However, I don't think it changes the world one iota. In only the gathering, the getting together of numbers to raise awareness of different issues, power behind that, but actually the actual part of the meditation, throughout my life, I think that kind of thing is good for calming yourself down. It's very self-supportive. But does it change my outer world or anyone else's outer world? No, absolutely.
Darryl, what would you say?
Well, I have to agree with Sandy. I'm not seeing exactly where any of these things have changed the world for the better. But, I mean, that's mostly an argument that sort of denies the relevance or the efficiency of any spiritual-based movement. I guess we're talking about a spiritual movement here?
Yeah, it's essentially the whole idea that along with protesting as a way of action proposes, then one can, Sandy, if you can mute yourself because we're getting too much noise, if you can, I can probably do that for you. In relation to, yes, how this, there's this mentality that spirituality is now the way to go. Like, along with world change, spirituality then is the individual aspect wherein you feel connected with others and you feel one with the world, and you create this positive experience that people get, being en masse in a group, in a gathering. And believing that within that, there can be maybe energies or positive thoughts that unite to change the world. So, Darryl, what would you see is the actual background to that mentality? Is there any relationship to religion, for example?
Well, I would think it's a direct relationship to where we find ourselves in any given moment in time, where the overall input is to avoid pain and embrace pleasure. So we have the pleasure-pain principle. And when we see or hear or feel upset or discouraged or angry or bothered or guilty or whatever, any negative emotions or feelings we want to try to get away from and try to go to the opposite pole and inducing the feel-good. So I think it's more like a psychological battle that everybody goes through. And maybe this attempt is trying to network and channel in whatever way they can, muster some sort of united front that will begin to bring change in the world. But maybe you should talk a little bit about like exactly what this group hopes to accomplish for those who don't know what the wave of action is.
Yeah, as we've been sharing throughout the Hangouts this month, the Wave of Action is kind of like the revamped version of Occupy Wall Street and other groups that have been very aware of the necessary changes in relation to the world system, economy, politics, but that don't necessarily propose a viable solution as we are within the context of the living income guaranteed, but they're only resorting to kind of once again listing in terms of the waves of action, protesting, and just exposing the damage, the problems in the world, along with some other ways of educating, like growing your own food and supporting your local producers. And in that list, as I explained in the beginning, we find the spirituality aspect of it, which I found very interesting because Occupy Wall Street had also had this relationship to Occupy Love, which I also once talked about it, wherein it's now the mentality of spirituality and protest joined together to kind of make this sudden change of consciousness, which is actually something cool. I mean, we do require that wake up in our humanity, but I do not necessarily see that a real wave of action is sitting on your ass, literally, and thinking positively or joining with people and having a good time, that will necessarily change the world. So what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, a bunch of, I would say that, you know, the power that the 99% have is literally that 99%. It's only in the number of people. That is our power. You know, the way things are and the things that you guys are getting together to change, the people that do control what's going on in the world now, they're not going to hand it to anyone. They're not going to want to give it up. And they certainly only want to enact policies that they think the public wants, the majority of people. So a lot of noise is going to have to be made, but not in a way of just holding up signs or getting together and praying. Because, see, if these things had worked, I would think the world would have changed by now. Can you imagine how many prayers are said even on a daily basis with that millions? That's a lot of spiritual power, and it hasn't, in fact, changed the world. In fact, we can see very clearly like how things are getting worse, how we are using children for sex on the internet. We are using children as soldiers, giving them guns. We are using children as labor to make cheap products. The world is not getting better. It hasn't through all the prayers, and that's a lot of energy. That's like a meditation, right? So clearly, it has not had the effect. And the effect, what will have a lot of power is this 9% getting together as a political force.
Exactly. I definitely agree with that, because how I've seen it is that it also deviates people from the actual solutions, like, hey, educate yourself about the system. If we look at the spiritual leaders, for example, that people see on their screens, on TV, and resorting to positive thinking, law of attraction, feel good in the here now moment, all of it is just let the world be, let your life just go, because you're here, you're marvelous, you're this enlightened being, and you don't have to suffer. And within this mentality, then people are also being driven by just, you know, I have to do nothing, because if something bad happens to me, it's because God required it, and required me to go through this, for example. And so justifying the abuse, the suffering, the wars that we create, the inequality, the lack of consideration for one another, and we excuse it because, you know, there's this idea, like there's this divine plan that we are just following, and we just have to raise our consciousness and pray and feel good and something will come out of it. So, Darryl, would you say that this whole spirituality movement or wave of action proposed is a way to actually evade or avoid looking into the reality of human nature, for example?
Objection, leading the witness. No, that's it. Court here. That's what the answer you want me to give. Look, I think the people who do represent the 1% really understand how the 99% are wired and how to manipulate them and how to control them and how to get them to see that their enslavement is actually liberty and freedom. And through all the divisions and the lies and the truths, they mix with lies, and the lies they mix with truths, and the images and everything that bombards a person on a day-to-day basis through the media, through networks of family, friends, and work. All these pressures have one goal, and that's to keep the status quo. So basically, I'm not going to hate on the thrust that this organization is trying to come up with, just because you have to start somewhere, and unfortunately people have to start where they are, and that's in a state of very suppressed and alienated stance that we find ourselves in. So what do we usually do? We fall back on what we were brought up with. We fall back on our traditions, our family, our beliefs, our opinions, and instead of trying to step beyond that, we will try to actually double down and rely on those old patterns even more. Therefore, change really is hard to come across. So on one hand, I don't see spirituality as a viable alternative for creating solutions, just simply because it just hasn't worked in the past. On the other hand, we have to start with somewhere, someplace. I mean, even if someone who's a Bible-thumping Christian can come to the conclusion that, yes, things are screwed up, we really need to, reimagine our situation here. I mean, we got to start somewhere, and this is as good an effort as any. I mean, it can't stop with just holding signs and having protests. There needs to the continue development and an evolution towards a real solution.
I agree with that aspect. Yes, there is a starting point, and as we saw, for example, the Occupy movement did bring a lot of attention in relation to the massive inequality that exists, and kind of creating the entire model that we all know now, the 99% versus the 1%, and so forth. But in terms of the actual solutions, that's also been quite a major critique to it, that it hasn't really landed onto a viable way to change the system,
and
which as this is.
You understand why that's so. It's that the reason why there's no solution that's going to come out of protests, or there's no solutions forthcoming, because the divisions and the lies and the truths are so pervasive, nobody really knows what to think anymore. So we have
and also the spirituality aspect, that's why we're also bringing that point here, because we've talked a lot about protesting, how it's not working, the kind of mentality that only brings in relation to blaming the system, blaming the 1%, blaming others, and not taking self-responsibility. So the focus here is why spirituality, as you say, it can be a starting point to maybe change consciousness or realize I have to change, but is there really that realization that I have to change as a human being? Or can we redefine spirituality maybe as a word wherein each individual can instead look back within themselves and ponder, well, what traits, what aspects, what habits, what patterns do I identify within myself that maybe a 1% also has. And so kind of changing the entire way of just asking for a divine God or creating positive energies in relation to, I want to spread the good vibes to people, and actually turning the spirituality back to self, to getting to see how do I interact with others in my world. What would you guys say about this?
Well, one reason I had a significant change within myself was through time in life and through some common sense. So for a while, I jumped on the bandwagon when I heard people say, it gave me an excuse really to do nothing, and that is, well, the world is in the way it is because there is a higher force. It's the force that made you, and it has placed you here to learn lessons, to go through your life lessons. Therefore, you are not responsible for people in faraway lands who are suffering. You don't have to think about them. You don't have to look at them. You don't have to give them. You can give a little charity, like that's okay if it makes you feel good. And I jumped on that bandwagon, and I thought, okay, all right, well then, and then I pray, and I get answers to my prayers. This is all working, until it didn't work, because my life didn't get better. Nothing changed through prayer. Now, what I came to was, wait a minute, well, what kind of a God is this? I finally said, well, not my God, no thank you. So I kind of had to step through a little bit of fear and just go, okay, well, if this is God, fuck you. I don't agree. So even strike me down now, because I'm not buying this anymore. There are so many people in my world who are suffering far worse than I have. And it took myself some suffering to even get to that. And I thought, wait, there's something wrong here. I don't respect this God. This God doesn't respect me or the beings on my earth. So, and I saw a really cool cartoon lately, and that was this guy sitting on a park bench. And he says to Jesus, why does God allow such, horrific acts on earth? And Jesus looks at him and says, I was going to ask you the same thing. Why are we allowing such, war and terror to go on, poverty, inequality, the massive inequality? Well, why? Come on, what's the answer to that? Because we are. Because we're too afraid, to give up our idea that it's okay to do nothing. We're okay here, I'm okay, my life's okay, I'm a good person, I care, but do I really care enough if I'm not doing something about it? And then I came across Living Income Guarantee, which is what we're talking about here, and started reading. And I started thinking, wow, wait a minute. There is a solution here. The solution is we all ourselves and understand what's going on and stop telling ourselves it's too big. I can't understand it. Do you know how many times I tell myself in a day, Sandy, you're just a stupid small woman. And that's my program. That's part of the lies Darryl was talking about. So I have to walk through that lie. That's fine. I'll just keep walking through that lie. That I am a stupid small woman. I'm insignificant. I'm here. I have intelligence. I have ability. I can read and I can write. So therefore, if I stand up and educate myself and then bring awareness to others, that's something I can do. And one of the reasons we're here, right, to discuss and bring people awareness to the solution of a living income.
And it's a solution that won't be coming just by positively thinking about it, by meditating on it, by just praying for it to come into fruition, but we actually have to do it. And you guys have mentioned very key aspects here, which I just want to bring forth just to give cohesion to this whole situation, which is why this spirituality solution that is being proposed kind of keeps the status quo that Darryl was mentioning, as well as the belief that, it is okay. We have this mentality that there is a reason behind all of this suffering in this world, and this is why we're tapping into the religious and spirituality mentality as an obstacle for real change, which is what Sandy just explained throughout her own experience, wherein she realized that it is impossible to kind of cover up the real suffering, the abuse that we all create with this positive thinking mentality, or with the idea that it's happening for some divine reason. And from there, taking it down to how solutions have to be placed into practicality. So I have a question here from Anna. She's saying, isn't the idea also that by meditating, for example, one would spread positive vibrations to others? Can you share a perspective on whether this works in fact?
Well, positive vibrations is a feeling, right? So you're spreading a feeling from yourself into another person. Perhaps, I think maybe that is possible, but that's not enough. You have to take physical action. And, I read in a spiritual book once, no amount of action is going to change the world. Some guru said that. Well, that's ridiculous. Of course action will change the world. In fact, action is the only thing that will change the world. So first educating ourselves, and then taking action.
That's the whole thing. Yeah, that's the whole thing of this hangout as well, and why it is so important to bring it to the front, because spirituality is really like inaction. It's just thinking, it's just waiting, it's just hoping, it's just expecting for something magical, divine to happen through our energy, which is invisible, which is not tangible. And if we talk about love, for example, real love would be work in action, work made visible. And so this I also took as part of debunking any type of, for example, occupy love. Okay, so you share love with others, you're gathering together, you're creating this feeling good energy and so forth. But is that creating any sort of plan of action to change the world, any structure for our economic system? And so that's why we're bringing down the whole spirituality realm to work made visible, to real love, if you want to call it that, which is creating the plan of action, an actual structure, an actual proposal for world change from the very first steps, which is what the Living Income Guaranteed is in fact. So thanks, Anna, for your question. We have a comment from Adele. She's saying spirit in actuality as a way to say spirituality. Very cool redefinition there.
It is.
Making it.
Marlen, one other thing I was going to say was, it's pretty funny how we can also idolize a lot of spiritual kind of leaders and authors, and we spend a lot of money, collectively we make some people extremely wealthy, multi-millionaires by purchasing their books, in which they talk about wonderful ideas of how we should all have this wonderful, peaceful inner place, and an intention to respect myself, an intention to respect others. But what, like Marlen was saying, I mean, what about real physical action? What about putting some of their money? How about donating the ticket money to physically building houses for people? I've never seen that done before.
I mean, that would be like relevant if a spiritual teacher would, for example, work on changing the consciousness, the mind of people into considering one another, into learning what it is to really love one another, to treat another as you would like to be treated, and from there gather those people that are applying those living principles and create a political party, for example. That would be then really, really like mind-blowing aspect there, and really breaking the status quo that Darryl was explaining. Spirituality is precisely here in the system as a part to only give a new, revamped version of religion. And we've seen actually people that have written spiritual books now running for Congress or something like that, becoming politically active in the US. So that's also an interesting story. Darryl, what would you have to say about this whole thing on the spirituality business, the way to make money through spirituality, through asking it, or working to create spiritual material?
Well, if you want to make $1 million, I have a really easy way for you to do it. It's time proven, and it actually works. You write a self-help book. Write a self-help book. You're guaranteed to hit the top of the New York Times bestsellers list. They're the most sought-after books. They're the most widely published books. So what does that tell us? Well, people understand that there's something fundamentally flawed within them, so they need to have a little guidance.
Yeah.
And if you use Christian or New Age or any kind of metaphysical accoutrements to fluff it up a bit, all the better. So basically, it is the best thing about spirituality is in its commodification, its commoditizing aspect. It's there to make money for the people, and it promises you to make money and wealth as well. And I think one of the things that has changed recently, I'd say in the last 50 years, and as far as the spirituality movement's concerned, is this link up with wealth and prosperity consciousness with spiritual precepts. This is a recent innovation. In the past, there was this whole thing, oh, you're not allowed to make money, money's the devil, The only people allowed to have money are the Vatican and the clergy and then, and I guess the bankers. But all I'm saying is that self-help is a huge money-making business because people realize that they're flawed and messed up. So, I mean, I was thinking of making a self-help book, but I thought it'd be too ironic and cynical and nobody'd buy it. So.
Which is what happens usually.
It would be like the tough self-love book. Get over yourself.
But it's happening. I mean, that's also the easy aspect of spirituality. You really have only to sell positive thinking, things that make you feel good, and you sell lots. Like, look at someone like Eckhart Tolle, for example, and then you just keep people in that mass thinking of, I'm fine as I am. I am a divine individual. I don't have to work on the system or look for, change in the world. I'm just fine. Everything is being taken care of, and that's a massive delusion that we have to prevent and stop from here on.
Here's the beauty part of it, though. I mean, all the messages, like you take Dyer, Chopra, Eckhart Tolle, Marianne Williamson, take them all, put it in the blender, everything they say, and it's exactly the same stuff. They just mixed in. I mean, all they do is make their spirituality opinions really fluffy sounding, and then say, well, this is the truth. And then people say, oh, it's the truth, it's wisdom, oh, I'll be healthy, wealthy, and wise. But basically, they're just being sold. I mean, this is a true story. I was actually speaking with somebody who gets paid a lot of money going to seminars, I guess, in feng shui and stuff. I don't know if feng shui is true or not. I just think it's like design. I don't understand it. But he tried to tell me that, well, yeah, there's a money genie in this vase, and if you put it in a corner of your room, it'll attract money. Oh, really? Okay. And this is a guy who apparently has been to Michael Jackson's house and lived down the street from basketball players and stuff. And I'm like, all right. I mean, people will pay good money for that kind of stuff, that kind of entertainment, that kind of
hope. It gives them hope.
Oh, yeah, hope. Four-letter word that means, like, oh, I wish this thing will happen to me. Oh.
Maybe it will. It's only $25 book.
I mean, that's the whole thing there, the whole waiting mentality. I hope for this to come my way, and therefore I hope for world change. I hope for the wars to end. I hope for all the children in the world to be fed. But who knows what in the system isn't really functioning to provide that for everyone. And I also know of real stories of people that have resorted to spirituality to sell, like Reiki and psychic readings, tarot readings, candles with energies and so forth, because they are actually in very dire economic situation. And they have resorted to this whole spirituality paraphernalia to be sold, to sell it in order to make a living. Which I find that obviously if we had a living income guaranteed, for example, those people would not have to be whitewashing their own minds of, I have to sell this because it's good, it's, I'm selling divinity and I'm selling good vibes and I'm doing well to people, I'm a good person, and evading the real problem in the system that isn't allowing them, for example, to have a dignified living. And so resorting to sell these kind of things, which is like selling lies, selling good experiences, which is nothing really, just energy, for the sake of making money.
Which is the system of the world. I mean, and this is it. This is the Zen of the system of the world. I must take from this other person, and I'll have power over this other person, and the other person will never challenge me, and that other person will never question themselves, and I'll always maintain control. And that's basically the kind of world we live in, and no amount of prayer or the white light or calling for the angels is going to change that. And so people change themselves.
Or our own positive thinking. Go ahead, Sandy.
I was going to say it's really quite deceptive. A lot of these spiritual gurus, they realize that very few people will be able to attract money for real, manifest a new life, and they realize there's going to be, probably 1% of the really doing that. So, and I think it would be really cool to find out one day when we do implement a living income guarantee. So when people actually do have enough, what will happen to religion? I would guess it will almost all but disappear. It will probably become much more holistic, and people will notice the tree and the apple and give thanks. That was cool what the person was saying about the words, Adele, spirituality, spirit in actuality, in reality. I think that for one, because religion's all up in your head, right? You're talking to yourself, doing your praying, and it can be dangerous, for some people that isolate. And when things are taken care of, when you can actually pay your bills and you're not living in such for all the time, stress, fear, you'll see outward more and be here with what is here in a nice feeling way, in a good feeling way, and we will join hands and have feeling and be extremely and sincerely grateful, and not having to be taking time and distrusting all the time. So a real spirituality.
That's also the comment that we have here from Adele. She's saying, so it would be to bring spirit out of the mind as imagination, as all this positive thinking that you're just mentioning, to spirit as living action, which is like living the words. If you really want to do good, then find practical ways wherein you can, first of all, support yourself to maybe change a pattern that is, for example, harming another, when you see you're being greedy, when you see you're being lazy or not wanting to take responsibility for something, and take action through yourself, and so become an example of what it would be to become that living, loving individual that makes work visible, for example. So thanks, Adele, for your comment. And we have a question from Gabriel. He's saying, isn't spirituality a way of hiding from the world system as it exists? How can love be a solution for the world issues if you are actually not seeing the real world? This is a good question.
I think he answered his own question there.
Yeah. Exactly.
Gabriel or Gabrielle?
Gabriel.
I don't know. I mean, I mean, there's the teachers. I mean, we're talking about, well, now we're sort of branching into like the human potential movement, kind of that kind of thread there. But while our world continues to devolve and splinter, we do have this innate desire to still win, you know, even on a personal level. So I don't know. That's just the way we're hardwired, appears. I don't know.
Well, it is our hard wiring. It's definitely that, and I do see also the relevance of what he's saying, because it is a way to actually evade, to not look at the actual, as you're mentioning, the culture, the hard wiring of wanting to make more money, as we were mentioning in the past Hangouts, how this social change, when we once again imprint our own desires, wants and needs above the benefit of everyone else, we just recreate the same patterns that have been proven to not only destroy our lives and destroy nature to the level that we're witnessing now, but we keep ourselves essentially reliving the past. So what we can also see here, that as a viable solution, is precisely as we've always said, that we have to live that change within and without. And so if spirituality is changing or focusing on this individual aspect of collective change and feeling good about yourself and so forth, well, give it a foundation to that. That's what I would say. And so that the changing of mentality, the changing of consciousness, the awareness that we are one and equal, then how can I practically live that out, which we've also talked about in the past Hangout for you to watch it, a DIY social change, do it yourself. And so from there, we can see that as we change as individuals, implementing the world system change through, for example, the living income guaranteed, then we have the outer change and the inner change. So the spirit in action, the ideas placed into action, along with the plan, the proposal to change the way the world system operates, so that we can provide a living income for everyone, then it is like a real stepping stone for change. That's how I see it. What do you guys say? Now to finalize this Hangout.
I was going to say, I definitely find the spiritual movement, even though people gather and are suggested in the wave of action to gather together in numbers to meditate, it is very much self-interested. Yes. A lot of spirituality is based on improving your life. And so what we were suggesting here is to put that aside, to stand up, be a bigger person, take a chance, and start considering what is best for all of us. That's very different when you do that.
Very important.
Sandy hit the nail right on the head right there. And that is the hallmark of modern spirituality, is that it's very egocentric. It's very, what can I get out of it kind of a thing? How can I make my world better? Instead of understanding all the relationships that go on in the world, we are really at the mercy of each other's, just because of our relationship with each other. We're actually at the mercy of everybody else. I mean, that's basically what we have to sort of reverse, that thinking, that egocentric mentality, and try to get everybody to consider the other person as equally important as ourselves.
Yeah, through action, because maybe someone can say, hey, but in spirituality we actually consider ourselves as part of the group. We're one and equal, and one is an equality, and feeling great being together, and there's good vibes in joining together. It's like a party. It becomes just, as we were mentioning, what I get out of it, which is also part of the whole protest feeling experience, right? That sense of togetherness through opposing something, but as we've also said, opposing something won't ever bring solutions. You have to actually plan, sit together, and actually begin communicating about, okay, what changes are actually required? How are we going to structure them? Which for all cases, for example, political organizations then are definitely the way to place the spirit into action if you have that real sense of collectivity and supporting another as yourself and wanting to really change the world. Any last words, guys?
No, I just think that, again, I'm not really, I'll have to do some more research on this movement, but as, you know, I guess help them out, help them, and lead them down the path of, you know, equality. I mean, they're calling, you know, they're saying some cool things, it appears. So just let's help them focus on real action and effective participation with others.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point of this hangout, precisely to realize that it is awesome that these massive movements are being created, are being placed as points to reflect about the world, the system, what we have to change, but just remaining within pointing out the problems or just creating an experience out of it won't change it, in fact. So I agree with that. Sandy?
Someone said something to me once that I never forgot, and that was, don't wait. You don't know how long you're here. If you're watching this video, you're probably someone, though, that, you know, has been thinking about this kind of thing, spirituality, being a part of a solution. Well, don't wait to look into what we're suggesting, which is a practical solution. Educating yourself about what's going on in the world for real, politics, economics, and the solution of a living income guarantee. Don't put it off, you know, do it to start living it now.
Exactly, I couldn't agree more with that. And I'm also going to be placing links to Sandy's blogs on these topics of spirituality and New Age and how it links to precisely this lack of money and how we can solve that problem through the Living Income Guaranteed, as well as all the information about what the Living Income Guaranteed is. And you can also place further questions, comments in the video itself, and we can have the panel also answer there. So I want to thank you guys for your time. Thanks a lot for being here.
Appreciate it.
Thanks to you guys. Adele said yes, right on, Sandy, probably on the point about the selfishness of spirituality, which now we have to obviously change to a point of you know, acting together with another to work for solutions that benefit everyone, not just oneself. So thanks, Adele, for your comments. And we got Viola Minjam saying, as an agnostic, am I invited? Yes, for sure. This is for everyone that believes in spirituality or doesn't, because this is really not about spirituality, but practical physical solutions that don't require an inkling of belief to be applied, but only physical, practical work made visible. So thanks for watching. I remind you guys, we're always here on Sundays at 18 hours in the UCT time frame. So check us out and see you guys next week. Bye all.